The frozen Finnish landscape is completely still. You'd never know a rifle is aimed at your skull. No scope glints to spot. Don't even try. That mound by the tree isn't snow. It's a face. The sights of his 15-year-old rifle are locked on you. The distance is staggering, but his father taught him to judge range by eye alone. By the time the shot cracks across the wasteland, you're already gone. One more in the hundreds claimed by Simo Häyhä, the White Death. The Soviets can't ignore him anymore. Darker ideas are beginning to surface. To stop the most lethal sniper alive, they may be about to unleash a bullet the world swore it would never see again. Simo Häyhä's skills were not forged in a military academy. They were carved out of the harsh realities of life on the Finland-Russia border. As a farmer and hunter in Karelia, his survival, and that of his loved ones, depended on precision. A missed shot at a fox or bird meant an empty table. This regime made boys into uncanny marksmen in a remarkably short time. He had one massive advantage in this respect. He was just 5 feet 3 inches tall, which meant his profile and silhouette were much easier to hide than those of other men. From his father, he learned the skill of judging distance by eye alone. Over the years, he became a master, capable of estimating distances up to 150 meters with an accuracy of within 1 single meter. At 17, he joined the Finnish Civil Guard, a tiny voluntary militia that recognized his talent from the get-go. His instructors were mostly veterans from the 1918 Finnish Civil War, who not only realized they were dealing with the diamond in the rough, but also knew how to polish his skills. The training regimen was grueling, designed to create self-sufficient soldiers who could operate with lethal independence. Ammunition was deliberately kept scarce, which made shooters gain an overwhelming respect for every single round. Recruits learned an ironclad rule: only fire when you're 100% certain of a hit. This philosophy was just what Häyhä had been doing all his life, waiting for the right moment, not wasting a shot under any circumstances. It was in the Civil Guard that his abilities were first officially quantified, shocking even the most experienced marksmen. In one documented firing drill, the young farmer aimed with his standard-issue bolt-action rifle at a target 150 meters away. In just 60 seconds, he scored 16 hits. The Finnish military did not need to train this man. They had discovered a magic shooter, a direct product of the cold, rugged land he was about to be asked to defend. Häyhä was issued the Finnish Sako M2830 Pistokorva, serial number 35281. From that day forward, the rifle became an extension of Häyhä himself. He stubbornly refused all offers of newer, supposedly superior firearms, even modern Swedish rifles with their advanced telescopic sights. It's not that he was a romantic, or that he didn't understand the leaps in technology from one rifle to another. It was just hard tactical logic. He knew every groove of the stock, the precise pressure needed for its trigger pull. He understood how the steel of his barrel would respond to the Finnish cold, and he fired accordingly. Adopting a new rifle would require years of study to achieve the same level of effectiveness he had with Pistokorva, as he would need to learn every detail and nuance of the new rifle. Unlike other soldiers' weapons, which jammed or froze in the extreme cold, Häyhä's M2830 remained consistently reliable. His daily, sometimes multiple cleaning regimens made sure the mechanism was free of frost and grime. His most critical and deliberate choice, however, was to forego a telescopic sight, relying instead on the rifle's factory iron sights. To most snipers, this seemed utterly foolish, a self-imposed handicap, but to Häyhä, it was the key to his survival and lethality. Scopes, he knew from experience, had fatal flaws in Arctic warfare. They could fog up in the extreme cold, rendering them useless at the most critical moment. More importantly, the lens of a scope could catch the low winter sun, creating a telltale glint that would instantly betray a sniper's position to a watchful enemy. By using simple iron sights, he eliminated that risk. It also allowed him to maintain a lower physical profile, as he didn't need to raise his head the extra few centimeters required to look through a scope, a tiny difference that could save his life. In late 1939, the geopolitical crisis in Europe slammed into the frozen border of Finland. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union had given Joseph Stalin a free hand in Eastern Europe, and he turned his full attention to his small western neighbor. Citing a critical need for a strategic buffer zone to protect Leningrad, which sat vulnerable just 32 kilometers from the border, on November 30th, the Soviet Union invaded. Nearly 500,000 men, over 2,000 tanks, and 1,000 aircraft. Stalin and his high command confidently expected a victory parade in Helsinki within 2 weeks. What they got was a national humiliation. The Soviet war machine was crippled from within before the first shot was even fired. Stalin's paranoid purges of the 1930s had executed or imprisoned the vast majority of his experienced senior officers, replacing them with politically reliable but tactically incompetent sycophants. The logistical planning was a complete and utter disaster. Soviet soldiers were sent into an Arctic winter wearing standard dark khaki uniforms, making them perfect high-contrast targets against the endless white snow. Their equipment was shoddy, their footwear wholly inadequate for the deep drifts and sub-zero temperatures, and their supply lines collapsed under the strain of the harsh terrain and Finnish guerrilla tactics. As a result, thousands of Red Army soldiers succumbed to the cold or suffered crippling frostbite without ever engaging the enemy. Soviet analyses would later concede that the brutal cold inflicted more casualties than Finnish bullets. It was into this chaos that Simo Häyhä was deployed with his unit to defend the Kola River, a sector that would become legendary for its fierce, seemingly impossible resistance. The Finnish High Command knew they could not win a conventional war. Their strategy was to bleed the invaders, to make every inch of Finnish soil cost a river of Soviet blood. This strategy embodied their national concept of sisu, a unique blend of courage, resilience, and stubborn grit. Häyhä was perfectly calm, even eager. He remarked to his comrades, quote, "Now I can truly put to use all the skills I honed during the annual Viipuri Civil Guard Autumn Shooting Championships." He was about to demonstrate, in the most brutal terms possible, just how ill-prepared the mighty Red Army was to face a single determined Finn who knew the land and his rifle. Häyhä's fighting style was a self-developed doctrine of absolute invisibility. He operated alone, preparing his positions in the early morning when it was still dark outside. He never used just one position. He always prepared several, allowing him to fire and move before the enemy could triangulate his location and unleash a retaliatory barrage. To conceal his firing signature, he meticulously packed down the snow in front of his rifle. This created a stable, solid rest for the rifle, and more importantly, prevented the muzzle blast from kicking up a fine cloud of snow, a visible puff that could give him away. He would also do something that at first glance seemed completely insane. He would keep a small amount of snow in his mouth, even in freezing temperatures. The idea was to prevent his breath from streaming into the cold air. Sometimes, he would even pour a small amount of water directly over the snow in front of his rifle. This created a hard, icy crust that would not be disturbed by the concussive force of his shot, ensuring total concealment. And that's not the only way he defied traditional marksman doctrine. He refused to fire prone, preferring a very rare sitting position. He found it offered a more stable platform for his small frame, and crucially, made it faster and easier to drop behind a snowdrift or other terrain feature immediately after firing to protect himself from return fire. He rejected the common romantic idea of sniping from trees as amateurish and dangerous. It offered no real cover and no escape if he was discovered. Every part of his method was carefully thought out. No decision was unplanned or made in the heat of the moment. This man had made sniping in the inhospitable gales of the Arctic a science. When a highly effective and well-equipped Soviet marksman started to eliminate Finnish officers on the Kola front, Häyhä's battle-hardened company commander, Lieutenant Arno Juutilainen, gave him a simple, direct order, quote, "Try to knock that man out." Häyhä selected a position on a snow-covered slope and began the wait. For hours, he lay motionless in the minus 20 degrees Celsius air, his white camouflage suit slowly being covered by a natural layer of frost, making him indistinguishable from the landscape itself. The weak winter sun was setting, casting long shadows. He saw it, a brief glint of light. The Soviet sniper, feeling safe and confident in his gear, had let the sun reflect off his scope. it was his only mistake. Häyhä slowly aimed his simple iron sights, accounting for distance and cold, and fired. The bullet hit the enemy sniper squarely in the face. Häyhä had turned the enemy's high-tech advantage into a weakness. As his kills grew, a name spread through the terrified Red Army. Biała Śmierć, the White Death. While the name was whispered by Soviet troops, Finnish propaganda also used it to create a mythical figure, boosting Finnish morale and terrifying the invaders. The Soviets responded with brute force. After Häyhä eliminated another high-value target, they would blanket his suspected position with furious mortar fire, but he would emerge from the bombardment untouched. His uncanny ability to survive against such overwhelming odds only fueled his reputation. The psychological impact was devastating. A captured Soviet officer later admitted the depth of the fear he instilled, quote, "Every time a soldier stepped onto open snow, we felt death was stalking us." Simo Häyhä's comrades kept a running tally of his 98-day rampage on the Kola front, a list he grimly referred to in his own wartime memoir, discovered decades later as his sin list. The final verified sniper tally stands at 505. For context, the most celebrated Soviet female sniper of World War II, Lyudmila Pavlichenko, reached a count of 309 over her entire multi-year career. The famed hero of Stalingrad, Vasily Zaitsev, was credited with 225. Häyhä surpassed their combined totals in just over 3 months using a rifle with no scope. Adding the unconfirmed targets, his numbers are said to rise past 1,000. In addition to his trusted rifle, he often used another weapon, the Suomi KP-31 submachine gun. In the chaos of close-quarters combat and during daring hit-and-run raids on skis, he was just as lethal. While not part of his official sniper count, it's confirmed by his division commander's reports that he took down hundreds of Soviet soldiers with the Suomi. The Red Army grew so desperate to stop this one-man army that they reportedly placed a bounty on his head and dispatched their own elite counter-sniper teams with the sole mission of hunting him down. Häyhä hunted them first, outwitting and eliminating them with chilling efficiency. His terrifying effectiveness fundamentally altered the battlefield. A single man could pin down an entire company for hours, halt a full-scale advance, and shatter the morale of an entire sector. By March 6, 1940, the Finnish lines at Kola, which had held for over 100 miraculous days, were on the verge of collapse. The Red Army, having reorganized and recommitted vast resources, launched a massive final offensive with its 128th Division to finally break the front near the woods of Ulisma. The situation for Häyhä's unit was desperate beyond words. They were exhausted, critically low on ammunition, and in a catastrophic logistical failure, the Finnish artillery behind them had run out of shells. There would be no supporting fire. This was to be a battle of infantry against infantry, of sheer overwhelming numbers against the last reserves of Finnish sisu. The Soviets attacked in human waves, a brutal and costly tactic designed to overwhelm the defenders by absorbing casualties until the line simply broke under the pressure. In this chaotic, close-quarters inferno, there was no use for a sniper, not even for the best in the world. Häyhä was put in command of his own squad and armed himself with his trusted Suomi KP-31 submachine gun. In the swirling snow and chaos of the all-out assault, he fought with the same dedication and selflessness as he had sniped, reportedly cutting down an estimated 40 attacking Soviet soldiers in the frenzied firefight. For 98 days, he had survived mortar barrages, direct artillery strikes, and elite counter-snipers explicitly sent to eliminate him. But then, a Soviet soldier caught a fleeting glimpse of him at close range and fired. The projectile was an explosive bullet, an expanding round designed to inflict catastrophic tissue damage, a type of ammunition forbidden for use against personnel by the St. Petersburg Declaration of 1868. The bullet struck Simo Häyhä in the left jaw. The impact was devastating, blowing away his upper lip, most of his lower jaw, and a large portion of his left cheek. Simo Häyhä awoke from a coma on March 13, 1940. He'd been unconscious for a week. The first thing he learned was that the Winter War was over. An armistice had been signed that very day. Finland had survived, its sovereignty miraculously intact against impossible odds, but the price was devastating. It was forced to cede 11% of its territory to the Soviet Union, including the Karelian lands where Häyhä's family farm stood. In defending his home, he had lost it, along with half of his face. The first news he read of the outside world was a newspaper article reporting his own heroic demise in battle, a mistake he had to personally write to the paper to correct. When it was confirmed he was alive, disbelief gave way to national celebration. He was a living icon. Field Marshal Mannerheim awarded him a rare battlefield promotion, elevating him directly from corporal to second lieutenant, skipping several ranks in recognition of his extraordinary service. He was also awarded the Crosses of Liberty 3rd and 4th class, the Medals of Liberty 1st and 2nd class, and was gifted a special name-plated Sacco M2830 rifle by a Swedish benefactor, a weapon he later donated to Finland's military museum, feeling it belonged to the nation's heritage. His greatest war, however, was just beginning. The recovery from his catastrophic wound was a long and agonizing battle. He would endure 26 separate grueling surgeries, as doctors painstakingly attempted to reconstruct his face, grafting bone from his hip to rebuild his shattered jaw. The physical and psychological scars would remain with him for the rest of his life, and he lived with chronic pain. He tried to return to the fight, volunteering for service in the continuation war against the Soviets in 1941, but his injuries were deemed too severe. He returned to a life of quiet obscurity, starting over as a farmer and successful breeder of hunting dogs in the small village of Vuokolahti. He shunned the spotlight, deeply uncomfortable with his fame. In a cruel twist, his celebrity also brought an unexpected backlash, and he received anonymous threats over the years, likely from a small minority of Finns who felt his massive victim count was nothing to celebrate. In a rare 2001 interview, he summed up his wartime actions with the simple, direct clarity that had defined his life. When asked if he felt remorse, he replied, quote, "I only did what I was told, and did it as well as I could. There would be no Finland if everyone hadn't done the same."